Our story begins on a quiet Texas roadside in 2016, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the day faded into evening. The air was still, the road nearly empty, a scene that could have belonged to any small town in America. It was here that a routine traffic stop unfolded, one that would ultimately send shockwaves through the entire American law enforcement system. Officer Roberto Felix Jr. pulled over 24-year-old Ashton Barnes, a young black man, for what seemed like a simple issue. Unpaid tolls that were actually linked to a previous owner of the car Barnes was driving. What should have been a minor administrative matter, easily resolved with a conversation or a warning, escalated with alarming speed. Tension filled the air as misunderstandings and frustration grew on both sides. Within moments, the situation spiraled out of control. The encounter turned deadly, ending with Officer Felix fatally shooting the unarmed Barnes, leaving the community in shock and disbelief. Barnes's family was left shattered, struggling to comprehend how a stop for someone else's toll violations could end in such irreversible tragedy. Their grief was compounded by confusion and outrage. Determined to seek answers and justice, the family launched a lawsuit, arguing that Officer Felix's use of deadly force was not only unnecessary, but grossly excessive for the circumstances. Yet when the case reached the courts, the focus narrowed. Judges examined only the final, most critical seconds, asking whether the officer genuinely felt threatened in that fleeting moment before pulling the trigger. This so-called moment of threat standard became a barrier, effectively blocking the family's case and disregarding the officer's decisions and conduct leading up to the shooting. The Barnes family and their legal team argued passionately that justice could not be served by looking at only a sliver of the encounter. They insisted that the entire sequence of events, from the initial stop to the tragic end, deserved scrutiny. They believed that true accountability required understanding the full context, the choices made by both parties, and the systemic issues at play, not just the final seconds. Refusing to give up, the Barnes family pressed their case all the way to the Supreme Court, challenging the very legal framework that governs how police actions are judged in America. Their fight became a rallying cry for reform, drawing national attention and sparking debate about the standards for police accountability and the rights of citizens during encounters with law enforcement. The stage was set for a landmark decision, one that could reshape the future of policing and justice in America for generations to come. For decades, courts judged police use of force by zooming in on the final seconds, the so-called moment of threat. This approach meant that, when evaluating an officer's actions, judges and juries were told to focus almost exclusively on the split second when the officer decided to use force, as if pausing a movie at its most dramatic frame. This rule asked only if the officer reasonably feared for their safety at that instant, ignoring everything that led up to it. The events, decisions, and choices made by officers in the minutes or even hours before the confrontation were often left out of the legal equation. Critics said this created a legal blind spot, letting officers escape accountability for reckless decisions that escalated situations. By focusing only on the final moment, the law overlooked whether officers had contributed to the danger through poor judgment or unnecessary aggression. Families like the Barneses were frustrated, feeling that the courts refused to see how an officer's earlier actions created the danger. For them, justice seemed out of reach, as the system failed to consider the full chain of events that led to tragedy. The moment of threat rule meant courts watched only the last scene of a movie, not the whole story. Important context, like missed opportunities to de-escalate or alternative choices, was left on the cutting room floor. This narrow focus led to inconsistent rulings and eroded public trust, especially in communities most affected by police violence. Many people began to question whether the justice system was truly impartial or simply protecting its own. Legal experts argued it shielded poor policing and discouraged de-escalation. They called for a broader, fairer standard, one that would hold officers accountable for the entire sequence of events, not just the final seconds. The controversy demanded a new approach, and the Supreme Court was about to deliver it. The stage was set for a landmark decision that could reshape how justice is served in cases of police use of force. On May 15, 2025, the Supreme Court issued a unanimous decision that changed police accountability forever. The justices rejected the moment of threat rule, declaring that courts must consider the totality of the circumstances. Justice Elena Kagan wrote that all relevant facts, before and during the use of force, must be reviewed. This new standard means an officer's choices throughout an encounter, not just the final seconds, are now legally relevant. The ruling reversed the dismissal of the Barnes family's case, sending it back for a full review. Officers can no longer be shielded simply because a threat emerged at the end of an encounter they helped escalate. The 9-0 decision sent a powerful message. Police conduct must be judged in context, not isolation. This marked a turning point in the national conversation on policing and justice. The Supreme Court's ruling redefined what reasonable force means under the Constitution, setting a new precedent for how police conduct is evaluated in the United States. Instead of focusing only on the officer's fear in the heat of the moment, courts must now look at the entire encounter, from the very first interaction to the final outcome. This totality of the circumstances approach asks, did the officer's actions escalate the risk, or did they take steps to calm things down? Every decision, every word, and every gesture is now part of the story. Were opportunities to de-escalate ignored, or did the officer actively try to reduce tension? The court wants to know if officers are truly working to prevent harm, not just reacting to it. Reasonableness is now a story, not a snapshot. It's about the full timeline of events, not just a single split-second decision. For example, if an officer approaches a minor stop aggressively, those actions can be considered when judging later use of force. The officer's mindset and choices throughout the encounter matter more than ever. The new standard holds officers accountable for their conduct from start to finish, not just in the final high-stakes moment. Every step is under scrutiny, and every action is weighed. It balances the realities of police work with the need for accountability, recognizing the challenges officers face while ensuring the public's trust is maintained. Officers must now avoid creating danger, not just react to it. Their responsibility is proactive, not just defensive. The court's message is clear. A reasonable officer is one who works to prevent violence, not just survive it. This new lens encourages officers to think ahead and act with care. This holistic approach aims for fairness and common sense in judging police actions, striving to protect both public safety and individual rights in every encounter. The Supreme Court's decision sparked strong reactions nationwide. For families affected by police violence, it brought hope and relief. Their stories could finally be fully heard. Civil rights groups hailed it as a landmark for accountability, closing a loophole that shielded reckless officers. Law enforcement reactions were mixed. Some feared hesitation and second-guessing, while others saw an opportunity to reinforce best practices. Reform-minded police leaders welcomed the alignment of law and modern training, emphasizing de-escalation. Critics worried about a flood of lawsuits and officer morale, but supporters argued it would build public trust. The ruling challenged departments to raise their standards and rebuild confidence with the communities they serve. Ultimately, it set a new bar for what professional policing should look like. The Supreme Court's ruling is already reshaping courtrooms and police departments. Lawsuits that would have been dismissed now have a chance to be heard in full, with juries weighing the entire encounter. Police departments are under pressure to strengthen training, especially in de-escalation and crisis intervention. Failure to train or use these techniques could now be central in lawsuits. The public may not see immediate change, but the long-term effects could be profound, empowering communities to demand accountability. Financial settlements from successful lawsuits will push cities to reform policies and invest in oversight. Over time, this could foster a culture where preserving life is the top priority. The ruling redefines the relationship between police and the public, ensuring the whole story is told. It makes the path to justice less steep for victims and families. This Supreme Court decision will shape policing for years to come. Departments must now adopt de-escalation-focused policies, not just as best practice but as legal necessity. Police training will emphasize critical thinking and seeing encounters as a series of choices. Performance reviews will value de-escalation, making force a true last resort. Body camera footage will become even more important, providing a full record for courts. The ruling may drive innovation in less lethal tools, giving officers safer options. Real change depends on how the standard is implemented and enforced. The door to a new era of accountability is open, but it will take collective effort to walk through. The Supreme Court's unanimous ruling marks a new chapter for American justice. By demanding context, the law now requires a full accounting of police actions, not just the final moments. This shift promises a more transparent, fair, and accountable system. For the public, it means a justice system that listens. For police, it reinforces the value of good training and restraint. Officers who act reasonably throughout will be affirmed. Those who escalate needlessly will be held accountable. The ruling won't solve every problem, but it provides a crucial tool for reform. Justice now means seeing the whole picture, a commitment to accountability and respect for every life. The conversation on police reform continues, but the path forward is clearer and more hopeful than ever.